Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Vortex Sparc Solar, the newest addition to the lineage, the generations or family of the Vortex Sparc is the Solar, which is a new 2 MOA red dot sight, which shares commonality with the previous generations of Sparc, except that it has solar power. So you have optional or dual power mode. It's still powered by 2032, like almost every red dot out there is, but it gives you a budget option getting into the solar category to greatly extend the possible battery life of your optic. Getting right into this review, one thing I was expecting from the Sparc was extreme durability. My own personal experiences with the other Sparc, the two previous Sparcs that I have, is they're almost obscenely durable for the price. And then you can also use the sentence, they're just obscenely durable. There are optics that cost 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much in the red dot sight category that cannot handle the use and abuse that the Sparc can. So I was expecting the same degree of durability from the solar model getting into the actual review process. Now, if you're not familiar, my review process, initial review process, is 2,000 rounds. Over the period of 2,000 rounds, I'm going to get a general feel for the optic, as well as put it through some hard use situations. One of the most controversial things that I do, maybe not so controversial to people who understand what it's for, is the drop test. Every 500 rounds, during that 2,000 rounds, I'm going to do a shoulder height drop test to kind of simulate load or shock being delivered to the optic itself. Now, one of the things when it comes to red dot sights rifle optics specifically, really just any rifle optic that has a mount, is the mount is also in play, which is a very important clue that will make sense later. Because there's a mount in play, if there's a zero shift and a drop, we also have to take a look at the mount. We can't just look at the optic, so that can be sometimes frustrating. Now, for features, you're getting a possible battery life of up to 150,000 hours. 150,000 hours, which is an obscene battery life. 50,000 to me is a really good benchmark, and this is significantly greater than that. You're also in the box, you're getting a mount, a lower 1/3 co-witness mount, so if you don't want to shop around or you just don't have a mount laying around, you don't want to purchase an additional mount, for the price you're getting a mount in the box. You can go ahead and put it together, throw it on your rifle, and get it zeroed. It has a 2 MOA red dot, which is, just through my use over the 2,000 rounds, a very crisp dot. Sometimes when we buy a quote-unquote budget optic, we do give up some of the clarity or the refresh rate of the LED, and that's definitely not the case in my experience with the Sparc Solar. The zeroing adjustments, your windage and elevation, are 1 MOA, which does leave me scratching my head a little bit. Main reason being, it's a rifle optic, or it's kind of geared for rifle use, so half MOA adjustments at the very least would have been nice to have. But luckily, I didn't have any issues zeroing it. I put a 50-meter zero on it and then confirmed at 200. When confirming at 200, I did end up with a slightly right of center hit, but we're talking about a red dot non-magnified optic. I was shooting an 8-inch plate, and I was grouping hitting on the right side of that plate. So I still had a 200-meter zero, but one click just couldn't quite get me left or right. I just couldn't get in the center. Now, I could have taken the optic off the rifle and then remounted it, and maybe it would have centered up then, but 8-inch plate on a non-magnified optic, being able to hit consistently 200 meters, I was going to go ahead and call that good, especially on a 10.5-inch Roscoe gun. One of the changes I made recently to my review process, at least for the sake of videos, is the burn down. I no longer do the burn down right after initial zeroing. Main reason for that being, I don't want to shoot 500 rounds just burning down after a zero. That doesn't really give me a good feel for the optic. So in the event that the optic breaks in the first drop test, the only experience I would have had with it would have been those 500 round burn down, which is literally shooting 500 rounds at the same target at the same distance under the same conditions. So I moved the burn down. So now I do the initial 500 rounds just getting a general feel for the optic, which is exactly what I did with the Sparc. The window is good, the tint is good. I got a really good clarity through it with very minimal distortion, very minimal lens distortion, and the parallax is very agreeable. I didn't find, even at extreme distances, shooting out to 50, 100, 150, 200, even with my dot not properly centered close to point of zero when I zeroed it, I was still able to get the hits that I wanted to get, even if I didn't have the perfect alignment, which is something I'm definitely going to check. I like to stack my dot when I do, especially when I do optic reviews, left, right, top, bottom, and see how much parallax affects my ability to get the hits that I want. So the parallax is good to go. Adjustments are recessed, and they're, slotted screw. So I didn't have to worry about keeping up with caps, and I also didn't have to worry about, because they're recessed during drop tests, breaking either my windage or my elevation adjustment. Those 10 possible brightness settings, including night vision settings, adjustments are on the left side of the optic, which is where they should be, really, if you think about it. Almost every shooter, most shooters are going to be right-handed. Even though I'm a left-handed handgun shooter, I'm a right-handed rifle shooter. So I like to be able to do my adjustments without having to come off the gun, twist it, turn it. So if I need to make a quick change, I can actually come back into a magwell grip and still get my thumb up there and make my adjustments. After getting a really good feel for that optic with the first 500 rounds, I went ahead and did the burn down. If you're not familiar, the burn down is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if that accelerated rate of fire will identify issues that I wouldn't otherwise see shooting the same amount of ammunition over a much longer period of time. Here's your burn down. One of the things I look for in a burn down is any kind of flickering or fading or heat related issues that occur in the optic. This thing sits on a skeletonized OEM mount, and it does sit above the upper receiver, so heat does transfer to metal to metal to metal. I can report that I didn't notice any issues first to last round with the reticle itself behaving in any strange or inconsistent way because of the either increased rate of fire or the heat that did build up and slowly transfer. Granted, there's going to be way more heat at the gas block than there is going to be at the optic, but I have seen optics in the past where that 500 round burn down did cause some issues, and I'm happy to report that that wasn't the case with the Sparc Solar. After the 500 round burn down, put another 500 rounds through it, getting a better feel for it, checking out the night vision settings, which are great. If you're going to co-witness this optic, passive aiming through your night vision devices, a smaller category for shooters, but something very important, especially if they're going to include night vision settings. I want to check them out. I generally don't use night vision setting on red dot sights because, you know, my thinking is I might have to go from night vision to white light, and that's kind of that law enforcement and just general mentality that I have. If I have to go to white light, I don't then want to have to bump my optic or my reticle brightness up to be able to see it. I want to be able to go back and forth. And passive aiming is just that, passive aiming. But the night vision settings are nice to have, especially if you're going to go ahead and, you know, co-witness a dedicated PVS-14 or some other night vision device to the rifle itself. Go ahead and slave it and mount it for, say, hog hunting or something. Those night vision settings are really clean, very minimal blooming. Of course, night vision does play a part in that. On the third drop test, we had a tragedy. The OEM mount bent. It's got kind of a swagger to it now, like it's coming home drunk from the bar, and it's gonna get there, but it's gonna go right and left more than it's gonna go straight. Unfortunately, this put my zero about, I'd say 25 MOA straight up and to the right. So I could still hit a man-sized steel target at 25 meters, but the gun was definitely not zeroed. In fact, it was so unzeroed, I didn't even bother trying to shoot a second shot group to compare the zero group to the other group, because the second shot group was completely off the silhouette target at the zero distance of 50 meters. Now this is frustrating because this is a mount issue. I don't definitively know for sure if the optic also came out of zero, like the internal adjustments messed up. But I can say definitively that the mount did bend on that third drop test. It may have bent on the first, it may have bent on the second, because I didn't notice that when checking the zero. So initially zeroed the gun, first drop test, zero retained. Second drop test, zero retained. Third drop test, zero was off in the ether. I'm going to blame the mount, which, all things considered, for the price of this optic's not that big of a deal. A lot of people are going to prefer some other mount anyway. I generally don't like OEM provided mounts, no matter what brand of optic, unless it's actually built into the optic, and that's been problematic with some optics as well. But I wanted to try out the entire package. So my advice to you, if you're looking for a budget optic, I can't say definitively because I'm not able to get 2,000 rounds on this, because I'm definitely not going to zero it with the broken mount. I'm going to take it off, put it on a different mount, and then keep using it. But I can just say from my 1,500 rounds worth of experience that it is keeping with the durability and the reliability and the features that we already expect from the Sparc. The Sparc is a more budget-friendly optic, but there's a lot of them out there. I think the oldest one I have is almost 5 years old, and it's still keeping up. It's still rocking. It's still maintaining, well, the features and the performance that I would expect out of any red dot sight. I do have to, of course, provide that caveat. The mount is not something I would recommend using if the rifle is going to be for anything other than target shooting at the range. If you're going to use it for duty or home defense, definitely pursue an aftermarket mount. That said, I'm pretty comfortable with the performance of the Sparc, even though I didn't get 2,000 rounds on it. 2,000 rounds is an arbitrary number anyway. It's just a number that I use. And these days, that 2,000 rounds hurt me a lot here in 2021 with the ammo panic stacked on top of 2 other ammo panics, and we might have another ammo panic after that. But I'm still putting the same amount of rounds down range that I was before. But if you are looking for a budget-minded optic that has a really good legacy of dependability, I think the Sparc Solar is a great advancement in the Sparc line, and the fact that it's going to give us a budget-minded battery life for a budget-minded optic. And even though it is budget-minded, it's inexpensive, it's not necessarily cheap. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.